Right, all right. Alan, do you want to join us on stage? It's you? Yeah? Big applause for Alan. Thank you, Makoto, again. E dalla regia ci potete mettere lo screen di At Rome? Non abbiamo le slide qua. We don't have the slides. Okay, let's go. Yeah, once we have the e-tron thingy. Where's the other mic? Was it this one?
Oh, okay, sick, yeah.
Hello?
Cool, look at that.
Thank you.
Don't worry. I'm judicious with the time, guys. How's everybody doing tonight? Thanks for having us, by the way. This is a lot of fun. We're going to talk about privacy in governance. I really like to think about things in terms of like the real world, right? So just a quick show of hands, who's like voted on something before, whether that's like an election or something else in the real world? Air quotes, right? Everybody. And just another quick show of hands, was that private? If it was, raise your hand. Like, in other words, you had the ability to keep that private. Right, so the vast majority of voting mechanisms around the globe are actually private. And they are required to be private by law in some countries, which I find to be really great. I think one of the biggest problems that we have in governance, at least when we talk about like on-chain and snapshot, is that it's wholly transparent, and that's a bit of a nightmare, right? Because at least in my opinion, I believe that people don't vote to be them true selves without having some semblance of privacy, right? You can be scared that you're going to be judged for voting no for something or voting with your true conscience, right? And this is a bit of a problem, right? And so one of the things that we wanted to do, right? We thought this was a really great place to participate in because there was a privacy and a governance, hackathon track. So we wanted to actually have a bounty that kind of covers both, right? Because we think it's a really cool thing, right? RAILGUN does privacy. We think governance is really cool, and RAILGUN can do private governance. So we put a bounty out for that. And I just think that I want to really talk about it from a bit of a technical perspective. And so I brought Kai, who is one of the contributors on RAILGUN. He's hyper-technical. I'm the exact opposite. So this should be a really good yin and yang. But I want to ask, like, from a technical perspective, how does privacy like change governance?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm most familiar with building the systems on blockchains. So I'm talking about things there. In like a hyper-transparent, voting system, you kind of just have, I have some list of people that can vote, and you just cast your vote from whatever the identity is that you can vote from. Making things private kind of separates the concerns of defining your voting eligibility criteria and actually casting the vote, right? So you've got, some sort of mechanism for figuring out who can vote, and that might be, I think in the majority of cases, it's one token, one vote, so token-weighted governance. But it can be, a variety of other things. Maybe you've got like some sort of identity solution. So you've got that over there, and you kind of have a separate, you separate out the actual casting of the vote. And so what you're kind of concerned about, right, with voting is you make sure that only people that meet the voting eligibility criteria can vote, and people that do meet that voting eligibility criteria, they only vote the amount that they're able to. Don't like double class.
Double voting or dead people voting in elections and things like this, right?
Yeah. Okay, I was not expecting that. So you kind of have this separate system, and what you're really concerned about is, if I follow the rules that is laid out by the system, right? What's the outcome? And so in like a private voting system, rather than just having all of these things kind of publicly tallied up, you do kind of rely a bit on maybe some moon math, but I think we're all sort of familiar with what ZK is here, at least a little bit. So we kind of rely on these sort of like mathematical constructs to sort of calculate over the data and just sort of give us the output that we need without revealing more information that is necessary.
Right, yeah, and so like, ZK is particularly fit for this, right? I'm wondering, like, is there like anybody brave enough to like raise their hand if they don't know what ZK is? Sick, everybody knows what ZK is, which is sick. But why do you think that like zero knowledge and blockchain together like make a really powerful tool for private blockchain, or excuse me, private governance?
Yeah, well, I guess since we've already kind of opened the can of spice a little bit, voting, I'm not sure if you've been around in crypto very, very long, but things can get very contentious, right? I think we're probably the most contentious group out there, right? The amount of infighting that goes on in crypto. But one thing that you don't see with voting systems in crypto is nobody really questions, hey, was that like vote, was that actually done by the rules, right? And the reason behind that is because we're conducting all of this on a system which is individually verifiable, so I can verify it as a participant in the system. I don't need to rely on some authority telling me, yes, this was like, I put my rubber stamp on it, it was done by the rules. And we get that property from having all of this data cryptographically linked.
Yeah, so I guess we don't really have that in like traditional voting mechanisms, and so we get a lot of like contentious votes, where people say, trust me, vote, he definitely won the election, right? And we argue about it for the next 4 years, that if they did or not. So I think this is a really big challenge for like traditional voting mechanisms, and that's why I think blockchain is a really powerful tool for it. And I'm really quite surprised that we don't have very many voting mechanisms that incorporate it. I guess I'm really kind of wondering though, like, do you feel like there could be any like negatives or like drawbacks from like privacy in a like a voting mechanism, especially on like blockchain? So like, for example, I think one of the things that I've thought about is like you could take and have like a ZK based thing, and you could actually even do like some homomorphic encryption type thing where you don't even reveal like how many votes were cast, or like you can just release a binary yay or nay, right, and not show who or how many voted. And so like this could have an issue around like whale capture, for example, so someone taking and stealing the vote, if you will, by being overly powerful in it.
Yeah, well, I guess it comes down to the sort of use case for your voting system. And exactly what the kind of eligibility criteria you've got is, when it comes down to like token voting, maybe you're a bit more concerned about whale voting, right? Because it is, especially in a private voting system, it is possible for a whale to kind of silently accumulate a lot of votes in a way that's not,
give me all the treasury.
yeah,
right?
that's
Yes.
not detectable, and kind of surprise you with the sort of malicious proposal. So I think it kind of depends on exactly what you're voting on and who is voting and how they are eligible for the votes. But going back to the point of kind of separating the stage of eligibility criteria and the actual vote itself, I think you can, depending on your use case, have very strong privacy guarantees around the actual voting system, but around the eligibility criteria, because we have this wonderful, open, verifiable system, have a much better kind of insight into, what kind of the makeup is of the voting population for your system, and depending on the sort of like threat surface that you're worried about, have differing levels of visibility and kind of alerts, right, or verification checks on, are you hitting a critical danger point?
Right, so it's a bit of a balance, right? So I want to be very cognizant of the time. I know we're about to wrap up, but the last thing I'll say is like, we're here on a hackathon, and I'm sure that there's some people experimenting with the track that is governance, right? But I think that a private governance mechanism has a very huge product market fit, and we're starting to see a lot of money being thrown at it, even from like the decentralized world. In fact, NounsDAO just gave out grants It was $70,000, and they gave out 3 of them. In other words, they gave out almost $250,000 for research around private governance. And so, like, if you're looking for something that, like, you could, like, raise money on and, like, actually build, like, a really big and powerful tool, like, private governance has, you know, massive benefits in this, and no one's really doing it. Like, there wasn't a lot of submissions to the noun style proposal, and so, like, I would suggest if you're a builder to go get it. 10 minutes.
Perfect timing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess this was the first UrbeTalks with 2 speakers on stage.